Hi, I'm Anant Naik. I was at Roehampton between 2006 and 2009, and I studied a Bachelor in Journalism with News Media and Photography. And I went on to work at Roehampton Students Union as Vice President Communications and Engagement. Yeah, I mean, all sorts. I think immediately after I graduated, I was a sabbatical officer at Roehampton Student Union for 2 years, where I was Vice President Communications and Engagement, and also served as a trustee. Um, since then, I've gained over a decade's worth of experience working in communications, marketing, digital, press, and PR. I've basically predominantly been based in the charity and not-for-profit sector. I'm currently head of communications and marketing at Mental Health UK. We partner with some of the biggest organisations in the UK to ensure that everyone has the tools they need to live their best possible lives. In this role, I essentially oversee all elements of our marketing, communications and campaigns to help people understand and manage their mental health. I'm essentially responsible for raising the profile of the charity. Before joining Mental Health UK, I worked in two head of department positions at charities such as Rethink Mental Illness and Gingerbread, and I've also worked in education at the National Union of Students, where I was an editorial press and PR manager. COVID's had a massive impact on the work of the charity, everything it does. Pre-pandemic, it was often quoted that 1 in 4 of us will live with a mental health problem during our lifetimes. We know that the kind of pandemic has kind of exacerbated that for many people. We've had a huge surge in people, calling our helplines, accessing our services. And as a charity, like many other charities, we've in our own way had to sort of scale up and to sort of meet that challenge and that demand. A massive niche for us is we do a lot of workplace mental health training. So obviously the pandemic, people having their work lives kind of turned upside down in many cases, working from home, having to juggle kind of school and childcare, from home a little bit more, has kind of meant that there's been a growing need for us to sort of go out in that space and really to help people to understand what kind of key practices and best practices they can have in place to sort of protect their mental health. So I'm brutally going to say no, but I would heavily caveat that it's partly because I had 2 bonus years at Roehampton Students Union, but it's also because I passed through Roehampton quite a few times recently during lockdown to come from Richmond Park for like a big walk when it was a sort of safe space where you could do that. I feel like I'd sound greedy otherwise, but like anyone, I definitely miss it as a bit of a time capsule, and luckily forged really good friendships there, and I guess still stay in touch with some of the people from there that have a really meaningful impact on my life. So I think it has something to do with myself being a Londoner. I think if I lived in another part of the country, I'd maybe give a different answer to that one. Yeah, so I mean, I was a Digby Stewart student of a certain era, so I feel like I couldn't answer this question without saying it would have to be the Belfry. Again, just because of all the the really close and strong friendships that forged there. Spent a lot of time there, obviously in sort of in kind of balance with a lot of time in lecture halls. But for me, it was like a really good sort of social space to sort of to make those key friendships. But I've also got a soft spot for other areas. Dare I say it, in Frobel. I've got a soft spot for Lime Tree Walk. I remember one night in particular actually where myself and a few mates were on a walk home, and the lake was completely frozen over. It was a sort of winter night, and we just spent hours. We were in no rush to go home, so clearly, but we just spent hours skimming stones on the lake and just chatting into the night and listening to the weird noises that they made. But yeah, there are all those kind of nice spots, I guess, on campus that don't sometimes make it onto the prospectus cover, but still mean a lot. Massively. I mean, obviously, if you look at the course itself, like, you know, I studied, it's not a million miles away from the work I do in communications and marketing right now. So I've always felt that kind of alignment, influence and sort of relevance to my kind of career trajectory and how that's kind of panned out. But when people ask me about my time at Roehampton, I always sort of come back to the kind of rich student life outside my course. At Roehampton, I think that's what really shaped my soft skills and my ability to engage with lots of different people. So it's things like being editor of the student newspaper, campaigning for fair trade status as our environmental society, a member of our environmental society, standing in student elections, you know, running events and being on student council, etc., etc. It's those things that also set me up for the kind of work I do now as well. I think it would have to be something around finding something outside of your course that you're either passionate about, or it has to be important that it stimulates you, and just dive into that thing. For me, I think it was really important. It was really important to do things outside of my degree. You know, when you have those kind of moments of lull during your course, or when you need some time away from an essay, or you need something else to sort of, you know, to get that kind of, and it comes back to work-life balance in a way, but you have something beyond just your course to enrich your student experience. For me, that kind of transformative thing was being part of Roehampton Students Union. Looking back at it now, like, I don't think there are many opportunities that you get at such a young age to have such agency over like a whole portfolio of work, or to, you know, to manage a department budget, to serve as a trustee, to, you know, to be an elected rep on council, to be a spokesperson in media, all of that sort of thing, to sort of run campaigns and events. You know, that was something that I just never knew was available to me until I came to university. So look out for those things, really. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, you know, I work for a mental health charity, and a lot of people that I know that work in the charity sector in general, you know, who are in roles where they're trying to create that lasting positive social change in society, would ultimately like to write themselves out of a job. Like, you want to achieve that change, then move on to tackling the next big social issue. So, you know, in 10 years' time, I'd love for us to be, you know, sat here and we live in a world where there's no stigma around mental health, where everyone can understand and manage their mental health, and, you know, access the support that they need to live their best possible lives whenever they need it. In terms of my career, like, my aspiration is to move into sort of senior leadership in a role within the charity sector. However, you know, working at Mental Health UK in particular has taught me a lot about valuing a healthy work-life balance. So while I want to get there, I want to get there on my own terms, in a way where I can sort of, you know, enjoy the world around me and the people around me. Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it was the late Father Robert Kagwa, who was chaplain at Digby Stewart College while I was a student there. So I'm by no means, you know, a religious person, but I lived in Bede House, which was, you know, adjacent to the chapel on Digby. And I sort of remember just seeing Robert, and he was just a friendly, familiar face that I said hello to daily, pretty much. And I think when you're a student, living away from family for the first time in your life, I think those sorts of things and those sorts of connections really matter. Robert had this like great way basically of finding connections with anyone and everyone, basically. For me, it was as simple as we bonded because my mum was from Kenya and he was from neighbouring Uganda, and I just visited Kenya with my mum for the first time in my life before starting university, actually. So that was like a really big thing for me. You know, there was also a period in our time at Roehampton in our sort of third year where sadly we lost a fellow student and a really close friend really suddenly and really tragically. The whole of Digby College was sort of rocked by that news, and Robert and the chaplaincy team really just opened up their doors to us, gave us a space to come together, to talk, to heal. So that's something that I always think about. It's finding something in that kind of, you know, that kindness in strangers and kind of building friendship through that. That's something that always constantly inspires me. It's a shame that Robert's no longer with us. I'd love to just have that chance to have a drink with him. Partly because he had a great taste in red wine and in fair trade chocolate.